Welcome to another Cal's Clips episode, and we are currently on the road to 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. You heard that correctly. Today we're going to be doing a Draw My Life, right? And we're going to start right at the beginning, all the way up to where I'm sat now. And I have got a very strange life, an unusual life, because I lived in lots of different places. So let's start with how it all began. I was born, and this was mini-me, and actually, that's my mum pregnant with my sister. That's probably as good as we're gonna get in terms of drawing. I was about the age of 3 years old, and my sister was just about to be born. And then in fact, very shortly after that, I had my little sister, who couldn't stand or walk at the time, but she is the first ever walking newborn. I've given her some earmuffs as well, because it's quite cold. So this was the family, and very shortly after my sister being born, we then got on a plane. Okay, yep, that's my plane, ladies and gents. Woo! There it is, with all 4 of us on this flight, and I'm laying down because we flew business class because my dad had a good job. There we go. So this was all of us, and it was heading towards the lovely place of Vietnam. And we went to live here. This was everyone. You know what? The landing gear came out and we landed safely in Vietnam. Okay? So when I moved there, I was 3 years old, and I went to a really cool... That's not really cool, that looks weird. That's not what... Here we go. It looks like a prison, but I promise you it wasn't a prison. This is the International School of Ho Chi Minh City. Well, it's also known as Saigon. I lived in the south of Vietnam, and this is where I went to school. And so did my little sister once she had arms and legs. Well, she was born with arms and legs, but you get what I'm saying anyways. I went here and I met lots of other kids that were exactly like me. They had parents that were working abroad, and a lot of the time, they were American military. So these aren't kids with guns. They're now the parents with guns. You know what? Okay, look, it was the parents were part of the military. I don't know whether they had guns or not, right? But and it was a lot of American people, and that's sort of where I started to talk kind of funny. Yeehaw, America. Right, so that's me talking funny. This is my sister here. And I went to school here, sorry. I actually learnt a lot of stuff here. I learnt how to swim. And you're probably thinking, Cal, that's really boring. Why the hell would you include that here? And it is because I was actually a very good swimmer at a young age. I was part of the swim team. I would get up every single morning at 6 a.m., right? I would go to school, get to school for 7. Where's 7 in the clock? Yeah, okay, school wasn't that great. And then I would swim for 2 hours till 9, and then I would start school. So as you can imagine, it was pretty intense, and I got really good at swimming, although I didn't really like it that much. My mum definitely made me go swimming more than I would have wanted, but at the same time, I think she just wanted me to meet friends and not be a loner, because she was a firm believer in joining sports to make friends, which I absolutely agree with now. Anyways, I became a good swimmer. I joined the swim team. I also started playing football over there. I spent my time from, I think it was 1997 to, I believe it was like 2003. By the way, there was no McDonald's in Vietnam when I lived there. And in fact, I have a t-shirt that says, I lived in Saigon before McDonald's. Now, if anyone can find a place that you want to live in where there's no McDonald's, I'd be very, very impressed. But back then, I was the first. I was there when there was no McDonald's. Little fun fact. So I lived there from 97 to 2003, 2004. And then in 2003, I decided to, again, we all jumped on a plane. And this looks more like a dolphin. Is it a better plane? There we are. Okay, and again, the family. Dad at the front. And my sister at the back. My mum as well, she can have a bit of hair. My dad still bald, and I had a little bit of a trim. We didn't have eyes or mouth. We moved to Russia. Big, scary Russia. And again, the landing gear worked. So we landed in, and Russia is so big that I can't even get it on here. Wow, that looks like a fish. But this is where I lived. I lived in a tiny little compound just outside of it. And again, I went to an American school. Now, my dad would spend 3 months on, 3 months off of an oil rig, right? So it's obviously under the water. And my dad, in his helicopter, gosh, now they're asking me to draw a helicopter here. My dad worked on these offshore rigs, as they were called. And he would do that every 3 months. He would go and work on them for a month, and then he would come back and not work on them for a month. So it was like on and off, and I don't really know too much about what he did on there, but we stayed there for a bit, and it wasn't actually that long because while my dad was working there and I went to school, which by the way, school in Russia, PE in Russia, it consisted of me playing ice hockey. That was PE during the winter. You would do that, and then you would also have snowball fights as well. I mean, that wasn't PE, that was during break time, but there was always snowball fights and then people getting smashed in the face with snowballs. And this was a lot of fun, but I actually spent 1 year in Russia, which was a bit sad. I was a bit fed up of moving because I kept having to lose my friends. I've just moved there. I thought I was gonna be there for a while. So I was only in Russia for 1 year. And at this point, I was starting to get really sad because it felt like every time I was about to make some new friends, I would end up having to leave. So I lost my friends that I just spent a year building up, and you know what it's like going to a new school. It can be tough. So I was really angry at both my mum and dad. If you guys were wondering, my dad was still semi-bald here. It is what it is. Oh, I will give my mum hair. I always feel bad. I keep leaving my mum bald as well. So I was really sad, but my parents were quite happy to leave Russia. They didn't have the best time there. And so this time it was time to head back to my mum's home country, Scotland. Yay. So we decided to head on over to Scotland, and here we found our dream house. It was a lovely house. It had amazing views of mountains. Jesus Christ, that is horrendous. But it had everything you could have ever wanted in a house, and it was in a small little town in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. And I started to go to school there, which was amazing. I was so excited, and I thought, yes, finally I can eat relatively normal food. And well, just everything in Scotland was like a big treat for me. So it was a big yes. I was loving it. And once again, I got myself stuck into sports. This time, what I was playing was football, right? Gosh, that's my football. Jesus. I started playing football and I loved it. I also started to play a little bit of ruggers. It looks more like an American football. I mean, yeah, I don't know, that's an American football. That's not a rugby ball. Anyways, look, I started to play rugby, but I was so short. Seriously, I was the shortest in my year all the time, and I'm not joking. Everybody in my year was taller than me. Seriously, I was a short king in my school, and that was actually, I was there, and this, I'm not even lying to you, right? Obviously, I'm relatively young. I'm probably about 10 at this point, and I was really upset, and I would always cry to my mum and ask her, when am I going to grow? I'm not joking. I used to be so upset, and the short king life was not for me. So regardless of that, I still made lots of friends despite being a short king, and it was lovely. I was playing all these different sports, having loads of fun, and then the dreaded news happened. Even though we had this lovely house here in Scotland with the lovely mountains in the background that now look like dildos, my dad told me, we're moving again, we're off. And again, this point, this was only maybe 6 months into living in Scotland. So that was very sad times for me. And again, I was very upset that once again, I was being taken away from these friends that I had just met. But that meant a new adventure. And we got back on board this wild plane that looks like a platypus. And we headed to Egypt. Yep, no joke. We moved, the whole family, all 4 of us, moved to Egypt. And it was amazing. Moving here, I went to a school, an American school again. So they're called like American international schools. I went to an American international school out there. And again, I played loads of sports. This is where I learned how to become the LeBron James of basketball. I was still small. I was still a short king. I don't even know if that's what basketball looks like, but I started to learn how to play basketball. I still kept playing football as well, which was amazing. And of course, I didn't stop swimming either. So I was playing loads of different sports, and I would actually travel and play these sports internationally against other international schools. I went to places like Jordan, which is a really cool place. And I even went in the sea that is so salty. That's my bendy body trying to dive down, because you can't actually do that. It's so salty that you have to float. It forces you to float. I don't know if anyone has drowned in something called, ironically, the Dead Sea. That's what it's called. But it is, I would imagine it is quite difficult to drown in there. Anyways, I went there and I played in a tournament which consisted of 3 sports. I don't know what this ball looks like. I'm just gonna put a V there because this is a volleyball. Got the basketball there, and then also, of course, the football. And so we played in all 3 of those sports. We had 1 team for each of these things. So 1 team would play all 3 sports, and then depending on your results, and you would play all the other schools at each of those sports, and then at the end of the week, you would see which team did the best across all 3. And I was the captain of my team. Big captain energy. And guess what? That's my version of a trophy. We won the whole thing, okay? First place. Believe it or not, before I got really tall and lanky, I was actually very good at sports. It's not a knee thing. Well, I can't use that excuse. I was just good at sports. And I think people with low center of gravity have no fucking excuse. I'm looking at you, Chris MD. Now, me and the family, we lived in Egypt, and no, we didn't take a camel ride around the pyramids to get to school. But we did live there for 4 years, and it was amazing. I loved living in Egypt. It was my favorite of all the places I lived in. But of course, all good things do come to an end. And unfortunately, that meant my dad's job was finished in Egypt. So what did we do? We flew all the way back to Scotland. Came back home to Bonnie, Scotland, to the house with the really suspicious looking mountains and the lovely scenery like that. And we moved back so that I could finish what, well, in Scotland, they're called something else, but essentially your GCSEs. My mum and dad wanted me to do my education or the later parts of my education at home in the UK so that I have these and then also some of these. So I was 16 and I was still at school and I had my exams coming up. I'll give myself a bit of a trim. It was more of a bowl cut actually. So like at this point, my mum started thinking that me going around wearing it with a bowl cut was okay. I mean, it's probably better than whatever the hell I've got going on now, but I was a pretty average student. I did well at GCSEs. I can't really remember my exact grades, but I remember being pretty average at school. I was average. I didn't do unbelievable and I didn't do terribly. And this is where I found, instead of revising for my GCSEs, I decided that I wanted to play, dear God, that is some controller, I won't lie to you. That's my controller. I wanted to play video games. I wanted to play COD, which is great, but my parents weren't happy with that at all. So I had to think of a way to convince them. Now, the way that I would convince them is by simply involving. Now, admittedly, the video cameras didn't look like this back in the day, but you get the point. I started filming myself playing Call of Duty, and that is when I uploaded my very first video to YouTube. And this was the start of why I'm here today. And it took me 1 year to hit 1,000 subscribers. Now, it would be pretty sick if off the back of this video, I could gain 1,000 subscribers, considering it took me a year to reach 1,000 subscribers. But I was super happy. I was really excited, and I was super lucky that both my mum and my dad both supported me. So after completing my GCSEs, it was time for some family news. That's always fun. You love to hear that. Boom, 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 boom. Dad's still rocking the same trim. And the family news was that my parents were getting divorced. It's not very uncommon nowadays, but at the time, I was always there like, my parents will never get divorced. That would never happen, but it did happen. Luckily for me though, it was pretty okay. I was actually okay with it, except for the fact that I was still a short king. I was okay with it. My sister, on the other hand, not so much. So my parents decided to wait till after my GCSEs, and then they were like, yeah, we're not together anymore. And I said, oh, all right, okay. I just didn't really care. Might sound kind of bad, but my sister cared a lot. But anyways, things marched on, and I ended up finishing school. That was all great. I made some fantastic friends there. I met some interesting people, and I was so happy to be done with school. These are my friends here. You guys have all heard about them. At least if you listen to my podcast on the Fellas podcast, you will have heard about them. And we were just glad to finally be done with school. And that meant, what was next? Well, all my friends seemed to go to university, but me, I was sat at home. And I decided I want to go full circle. And that meant we were heading back to see Big Ben. And so I flew down, I came down on my merry self, and I ended up living here on somewhere called the Isle of Dogs in London, right? I wouldn't recommend living there, but it wasn't the worst place in the world either. So me, and at this place, I met Calix. Well, I didn't meet him, I kind of knew him beforehand, but we decided to move in together with another fella named Tobias. Well, I think there was 2 I's in his YouTube name, but yeah, we moved in together, and then there was me in the middle. Oh, by the way, since leaving school, I ended up growing quite a bit. I'm now a tall king. Great news. Now that all lasted about 1.5 years. We lived together, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't really leave the house, and I didn't really have many friends in London because I wasn't doing any sports or anything fun like that, like I used to get up to at school. Anyways, from there, we moved into something that you guys will know as the Sidemen Tower. And in the Sidemen Tower, I stayed living with Calix and myself. And at this point, Tobias wanted to go and live with some of his friends back where he was from in Brighton, which was absolutely fine because it meant that we can introduce, as people know him, W2S, aka Harry. Harry was looking for a place in London. We had a free space opened up, and we said, why not come and join us at the Sidemen Tower? So from here, we all started uploading videos. Well, Harry more than anyone. This is when Harry, who was already pretty big, but certainly went from Road to Shaw, and he made the transformation into W2S. That is what I call the evolution, right? And it was amazing to watch someone blow up like that on YouTube, because my God, it was impressive. Now, from here, Calix, although it's not a story in his life, Calix, who had a trim as well. Look, I don't need to keep putting trims on everyone. You get the point, right? Calix decided to quit his job, said, fuck the 9 to 5. And so he started making YouTube videos full time. And I started uploading FIFA videos. More importantly, I became the manager of QPR. And this one series was the series that took me from being a relatively scrub level YouTuber to the mighty 1 million subscribers. So shout out to QPR and shout out to everybody that watched that series, because that took me from not making a lot of money on YouTube and really keeping an eye on that bank account to being able to live comfortably. So that was a big fat dub. At this point, we were all one big happy family, right? And from here, we decided we would move again together, all 3 of us, into a new house. And this house was just on the river. And it was the most beautiful house. That is my version of a heart, my God. It was the most beautiful house that I've personally lived in to date. And we had some amazing times. But from there, I decided to go from FIFA videos into whatever you want to call the type of videos I make now. When people ask, I say that I'm just dicking around with my friends and people want to watch that. So I made the transition over to whatever the hell content I make now. And I was very lucky that people followed along with me. In fact, everybody followed along with me. And in fact, there ended up being way more of you. And that's where I hit 2 million subscribers. Great success. And this is when the Sidemen started to kick off. Now, the Sidemen had been around for a long time, but this is when they started to take things very seriously and decided to level up UK YouTube. And at this point, it was very inspiring, for me at least. And I thought, what these guys are doing is absolutely amazing. And I need to level up what I'm doing. So then I hired my very first cameraman, and his name was Cameraman Sam. And a lot of you guys probably still remember him. Now, Sam was great. Me and Sam, we had actually worked together for plenty of time. We worked together for a total of 5 years, and we made some of the coolest videos, some of my favorite videos, and some that you even see to this day, like the 1-year YouTuber interview, which is amazing. But of course, our tenancy was up and we had to move. And this time, Calix was swimming, and I mean swimming in cash. So what he decided to do was fob me and Harry off, and he said, "You're too poor." So he decided to go and buy his own house. And he wanted to live in that house by himself. So that meant me and Harry had to move in together. And at this point, me and Harry were very happy. We were super excited about our brand new flat that we had in central London with a great rooftop for lots of parties. That's the sign for parties. Sadly, it didn't go to plan because COVID happened, and that meant we were stuck inside of our flat for about 1.5 years. And by the time the 1.5 years had finished and it was all done, it was time to move. We couldn't believe it. Not much had happened, but it was time to move. And I was at about 3 million. And it meant we had to move. And as things happen, when you get older, you like having your own space. So we both decided, let's get our own flat. But we didn't stray too far away from each other, and we still see each other all the time, which is great, because Harry is one of my closest friends, and you never really want to go too far away from your closest friends. Anyways, that brings us to the 14th of June, 2022. And Sam, if we remember Cameraman Sam, he no longer works for me. He is doing his own thing, absolutely smashing it. So Sam is no longer. Instead, we have the regen. The Sam on steroids, some would say. His name is Cameraman Harry. And so now we have Cameraman Harry and I working on the main channel with the lovely help of other people around us. We have assistant and producer Biz, who helps make the YouTube channel Calfreezy run at 100%. And that's where we are now. But this time we've started Cal's Clips, and that is what you're watching now. And hopefully we can reach 1 million subscribers by the end of the year. So hopefully I haven't bored you guys with too much waffle, but at least now you guys sort of understand how my life worked. And this actually isn't my face definitely is more like, it's just longer, okay? It's just a long face. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy this Draw My Life, then yeah, leave a thumbs up. You might have fucking got bored halfway through. That's fair enough. But yeah, that's my life. Bye.